The call came in at 11:47 p.m. I remember the time because I'd been staring at the microwave clock, waiting for my leftovers to heat up, and the moment my phone buzzed on the counter, something in my chest went tight before I even looked at the screen. It was the hospital. My daughter, 7 years old, barely 4 feet tall, still sleeping with a stuffed rabbit she'd named Captain, was in the emergency room. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember if I locked the front door. I just remember if I the parking lot of St. Vincent's, how the fluorescent lights made everything look underwater, and a nurse named someone I didn't catch telling me my daughter had been brought in by ambulance after a fall at my sister's house. A fall, that's what they called it at first. She was in a room at the end of the hall, hooked to a monitor, her left arm in a temporary splint. Her face was scraped along one cheekbone. She had a bruise on her temple that was already turning the color of a storm cloud. She was unconscious. I sat down next to her bed and took her hand. Small, soft, the nails still painted the chipped pink she'd picked out herself 2 weeks ago, and I just held it. The machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. I couldn't understand how anyone in this building was capable of laughing. The attending doctor came in around 1 a.m. and explained that she had a mild concussion and a hairline fracture in her forearm. The fracture wasn't severe. The concussion needed monitoring. She would likely wake in a few hours. He said all of this in the calm, practiced way that doctors deliver information, and I nodded at everything he said while understanding almost none of it. All I could think was, where was my sister when this happened? I had dropped my daughter off at my sister's house that afternoon. I do it sometimes on weekends. She lives 20 minutes from me, has a big backyard, and my daughter loves going over there. She loves the trampoline, loves the dog, loves my sister's cooking. I trusted her completely. My sister had called me when the ambulance came. That call I also missed. I'd been in the shower, and by the time I called back, she'd already sent a text. Ella fell off the back porch. Ambulance already there. Going to St. Vincent's, she's okay I think. 2 words, that's what she gave me. By the time I got to the hospital, my sister was already in the waiting room. She stood up when she saw me and opened her arms, and I let her hug me because I didn't know yet. I thought it was an accident. I thought it was one of those terrible, random things that happen to children who run too fast and don't look where they're going. She was just playing, my sister said. I was inside for like 2 minutes. I came out and she was on the ground. I nodded. I went back to my daughter's room. I called my mother on the way in. It was past midnight by then, but my mother is a light sleeper and she answered on the second ring. I told her what happened and she made a sound I'll never forget. This sharp intake of breath, like she'd been punched. I'll come, she said. You don't have to, she's stable. I'm coming. My mother was there by 2 a.m. She sat on the other side of the bed and held my daughter's other hand. And the 3 of us just stayed there, in that pale, quiet room, and the only sounds were the machines. At some point I went out to get coffee from the vending machine down the hall. My sister was still in the waiting area. She was on her phone. She looked up when she saw me and something crossed her face. Not guilt, exactly, but something adjacent to it. Like she was waiting for a question she wasn't ready to answer. I should have asked it then, I didn't. I went back to the room. My daughter still hadn't woken. My mother had fallen asleep in the chair, her chin resting on her chest. I sat there and I watched my daughter breathe, and I tried not to think about how small she looked in that bed, how wrong it was, how the machines made her seem like something fragile and borrowed, not the girl who climbed every tree in my backyard, and once ate an entire pizza by herself on a dare. She woke up at 4:18 in the morning. Not dramatically, not like in movies, where the eyes fly open and someone gasps. She just made a small sound and her fingers moved, and when I leaned over her, she looked at me with eyes that were glassy and confused and then slowly focused. Dad, she said. Hey, sweetheart. My voice cracked. I couldn't help it. I'm right here. She looked around the room, at the machines, at the lights, at the ceiling. My arm hurts, she said. I know, you broke it a little bit, but you're going to be okay. She was quiet for a minute. I let her be. The doctor had said not to rush her, to let her orient herself. And I was holding everything inside me with both fists, trying not to overwhelm her. Then she looked at me again, and her expression changed. Something settled in it. A seriousness that 7-year-olds shouldn't have to carry. Dad? She said again. Yeah, Aunt Val pushed me. The room didn't spin. That's not how it works. The room stayed exactly where it was, fluorescent and still, and every sound, the machines, the hall, my mother's shifting in the chair continued without interruption. But something inside me went very, very quiet. What did you say, baby? Aunt Val pushed me. She said it the same way she'd said her arm hurt, as a fact, as something that had already happened and couldn't be taken back. I was standing near the edge and she pushed me and I fell. My mother was awake. I don't know when that happened, but she was sitting straight in the chair now, looking at her granddaughter with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. She didn't mean to, my daughter added, the way children try to soften things they don't have words for. I think she was mad. I stood up. I walked to the window. There was nothing outside but the hospital parking lot and the dark. And I stood there looking at it while something cold moved through me, top to bottom, like water through a cracked wall. Val, my sister who'd hugged me in the waiting room, my sister who'd said she was just playing. I was inside for 2 minutes. I went back out to the waiting area. She was still there. It was almost 5 a.m., and she was still there, which I'd thought was because she cared, because she was worried, because she was my sister, and that's what family does. Now I stood in the doorway of that waiting room and looked at her, and she looked up from her phone and tried to smile. "How is she?" Val asked. "She's awake," I said. "Oh, thank God." She started to stand. "Can I see her?" She told me what happened. Val went still. "She said you pushed her." A long silence. The vending machines hummed. Somewhere outside a car started. "Zach," she said. My name in her mouth sounded like a plea. "She's 7 years old, she doesn't make things like that up." "It wasn't, I didn't mean." She stopped, started again. We were arguing. She was being difficult, she wouldn't come inside when I asked her, and I put my hand on her shoulder to steer her and she lost her balance. "You pushed her." "It wasn't like that. She has a broken arm, Val. She has a concussion. She's 7 years old and she's in a hospital bed and you stood in this waiting room and told me she fell." She didn't say anything. She looked at her hands. "Were you drinking?" I asked. Another silence, longer this time. "I'd had a couple glasses of wine," she said. "I wasn't drunk. I was perfectly." I walked away. I didn't trust myself to stand there anymore. I went back to the room, sat down next to my daughter, held her hand again. My mother looked at me and I shook my head and she closed her eyes. When the shift nurse came in to check on us around 6, I told her what my daughter had said. I asked to speak with someone from patient services. By 8 a.m., I had spoken to a social worker. By 10, I had called my attorney. The police came to take my daughter's statement that afternoon. She told them the same thing she'd told me, in the same simple, factual way. She told them Aunt Val had put her hands on her shoulders and pushed, and she fell backward off the porch. She told them she was scared. She told them she didn't want to go back there. I stood outside the door during the interview, and I pressed my forehead against the wall, and I breathed through it. Val was questioned at the station 2 days later. Her attorney, she'd gotten one, fast, said it was an accident. Said the physical contact was minor, incidental, that my daughter had lost her footing on her own. Said Val was grieving the misunderstanding and had tremendous love for her niece. I said nothing publicly. I had been advised not to. But here is what I know. My daughter doesn't lie. Not about things like this. She barely lies about small things. She's one of those kids who confesses to eating the last cookie before you even notice it's gone. She is guileless in a way that breaks my heart sometimes, because the world is not built for people who tell the truth without hesitation. What happened next took about 4 months. In that time, I filed for a civil protective order. It was granted. Val could not contact me, my daughter, or come within 500 feet of my home. Her attorney challenged it. The judge upheld it. The criminal case was harder. The DA reviewed the evidence. My daughter's statement, the neighbor who'd seen Val on the porch with a glass of wine before it happened, the ER report documenting my daughter's injuries, and decided to pursue a charge of reckless endangerment of a child. Not assault, not battery, reckless endangerment. My attorney told me this was the realistic ceiling given what they could prove. Intentional contact is hard to establish criminally when the other party claims accident and there's no video. I understood this, I didn't like it. Val entered a no-contest plea. She received 18 months of probation, mandatory completion of a parenting awareness program, and her driver's license was not affected. She paid a fine I will not dignify by specifying the amount. No jail time. I sat in the car after the hearing and I called my attorney, and she let me ask all the questions I needed to ask. And then she said, gently but clearly, that this was the outcome, and we had done everything we could do within the system. I thanked her and hung up and stared at the steering wheel for a while. My mother called me that night. She'd been in the courtroom. She said she was sorry, that it wasn't fair, that she'd tried. Those were her words. I tried to talk to Val before it came to this, and that Val had told her I was overreacting, that it was an accident, that I was destroying the family over an accident. What did you tell her? I asked. A pause. I told her that she hurt my granddaughter, and she lied to my son's face in a hospital waiting room, my mother said, and that those are not things I can set aside. That meant something to me. I want to say that because it's true, and because I think people hear these stories and assume everyone fails you at once. But that's not how it was. My mother didn't fail me. She showed up at 2 a.m. and held her granddaughter's hand, and when the truth came out, she didn't ask me to minimize it, to keep the peace. She chose her granddaughter. I don't know how hard that was for her. Val is her daughter too, but she chose her, and I will never forget it. My daughter has been in therapy since the week she came home from the hospital. Her therapist is good. Warm, unhurried, the kind of person who keeps a basket of art supplies on the table and never pushes. My daughter draws a lot in those sessions. She doesn't tell me what she draws, and I don't ask. That's her space. What she has told me, in the car, in the kitchen, at bedtime, in the random bursts that kids use to communicate the things they've been turning over, is this. She doesn't miss Aunt Val. She misses the dog. She misses the trampoline. She misses the way Val used to make mac and cheese from scratch and let her stir the pot. But she doesn't miss Val herself. And she's said that with a kind of clarity that I think will break open in her differently later, when she's older and has more language for it. For now it lives in her as a fact, the same way she holds all facts. We moved through the school year. She lost a tooth. She joined a swim team. She got obsessed with a book series about a girl who solves mysteries with her dog. And she read all 6 books in about 3 weeks and kept spoiling the endings for me at dinner. I watched her and I thought, this is what survival looks like. Not healed, not fixed, not like it didn't happen, but here, and eating dinner, and complaining about the mystery books being over, and asking me if we could get a dog. We're getting a dog. I told her we could in the spring. She has already named it. The thing about having your trust shattered by someone you grew up with is that it doesn't make you distrust everyone. That's the story people expect, I think. That it closes you off, that you become guarded, that you stop letting people in. Maybe that happens for some people. For me, it worked differently. What it did was clarify things. I know now exactly who shows up when things go wrong. I know who held my daughter's hand at 2 a.m. and who answered their phone on the second ring, and who sat across from me at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee the morning after the hearing and didn't say anything, just sat there, because I didn't need words. I needed presence. I know all of that now with a kind of precision I didn't have before. Val and I have not spoken since the waiting room. I don't plan to change that. Some people in my extended family have opinions about this. I've heard, through the reliable transmission of family gossip, that I'm being inflexible, that I should consider forgiveness, that children are resilient, and she should be allowed back into our lives. That family is family. I have a daughter who went to her aunt's house on a Saturday afternoon and came home in an ambulance. I have a daughter who, with a fractured arm and a bruised temple, in a hospital bed at 4 in the morning, told me the truth without being asked. I have a daughter who named a stuffed rabbit captain and reads mystery novels at the dinner table and asked me if we could get a dog. She is my answer to every single one of those opinions. The first morning she was back home, I made pancakes. It's the thing I do when I don't know what else to do. Cook something, put it on the table, sit across from someone I love and watch them eat. She came downstairs in her pajamas with her arm in a proper cast and climbed onto the kitchen stool and asked for chocolate chips in hers. And I said yes, obviously. And we sat there in the morning light and she talked about the hospital jello bad, the nurses, mostly nice, and the fact that she had already told 3 people at that school about her cast and everyone wanted to sign it. I put the chocolate chips in. I watched her eat. I thought about the version of that morning where things had gone differently, where I'd gotten a different call, where the fall had been worse, the landing different, the outcome not a cast and a concussion, but something I can't make myself finish thinking about even now. And then I stopped thinking about it, because she was right there, asking for more syrup, and she was okay, and that had to be enough. It was enough.